Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this film talk hosted by FilmFEST Munich. My name is Davide Abbatescianni, and I'm an international reporter working for CineCoPro and a journalist and film critic for a few other outlets. I'm very happy to be here today with two esteemed Nordic guests, two great directors, and we're going to talk about their two films. Tell Everyone, directed by Alli Haapasalo. I hope I nailed your surname. Apparently, yes. And Christian Bonke, director of HERCULES FALLIng from Finland and Denmark, respectively. Thank you. So the purpose of this conversation is to dig deeper into their craft, basically. The research process they went through for the making of their films. And a common thread we'll identify pretty quickly is vulnerability, which is connected to the storytelling itself, but also to their work with the actors. So we're going to dig deep into that. We're going to have a few questions, but before we start, I'm going to sit, and I'm going to ask our two guests to briefly introduce themselves and to tell us how they entered the film business, because usually this is a fun story or an interesting one or a boring one, but it's good to know. So maybe Christian, what about you? When did you start doing film? How did that happen?
Actually, it's many years ago in my early 20s, I think. Me and some friends made a record company that was supposed to conquer the world. It really didn't. But I started making music videos for the artists, just very cheap ones. But that was my entry point to that. And then after 5 or 6 years, I was taken into the Danish film school.
All right. What about you, Alli?
As a young girl in high school, I wanted to save the world, and I wanted to do that by documentary filmmaking. And I applied to journalism school and very quickly realized that was not the place to study filmmaking. I escaped to Sweden and met some friends who talked about becoming filmmakers, and that was the first time it ever occurred to me that I could actually study actual filmmaking. That's how it was, like astronaut filmmaker, you know. But I came back to Finland and applied to film school and got in. I did the Finnish film school, and after graduating, I felt like I felt the calling of the world. I couldn't just stay in Helsinki, which felt to me the periphery of the world. This was 20 years ago. And I applied to New York to go to NYU Tisch, which is another film school. And so I, used the film school as a good excuse to move to New York for 10 years. So I went to film school there and then came back to Finland and very slowly started actually making films.
Myself, I took a very weird path. I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm trained as a film director and theater director. So I got both degrees, one in Italy and one in Estonia. Then I wanted to become an academic. I miserably failed my PhD, but I found out that I liked being a journalist and a critic. And somehow over the years, it became a real job. I'm paying a mortgage, guys. So that's how it went. All right, before we show the two trailers of your films, if you can just give us a bit of a taste, like a logline or a couple of words, just to get a sense of what we're about to watch.
What you're about to watch is the film of Yusuf, who's a war-torn war veteran who has a violent outburst at home after trying to cope with the everyday life, but he's spoiling up, and one day he has a violent outburst, and is pushed away from his family, ends up in a rehabilitation center on a faraway island of Denmark, where he reluctantly and is going into a healing process, trying to reconnect with his family.
What about Tell Everyone?
Tell Everyone is a story of Amanda Aaltonen, a woman who, in the Finland of 1898, is taken to an asylum island called Seili, where there's an institution for women who are unfit for society for numerous reasons. Some are actually dealing with mental illness, some just have neuroatypical behavior, which at the time was not understood at all, and some are simply not assuming the role given to them, like my main character, Amanda, who is simply how should I say, rebellious woman. She refuses to surrender to authority, which is unjustly treating her. She believes very stubbornly in equality of all people. She thinks that she is just as valuable as the people in power, and that, of course, is completely out of line for women of her class. She's a poor woman. Well, any women really at the time, and many still. And so it's her story of what kind of a life she makes on the island, of, I guess, her riot against the powers that be.
Great. We can play the 2 trailers and then we're going to start our conversation. Thank you.
Goddag, Josef. Så er det farvel til fastlandet.
I served with the Australian Army for 20 years as an officer. Where were you deployed?
Vågn op. Far. Far.
I know what it's like when your family's afraid of you.
Gå væk.
This is an opportunity to recreate the life you deserve and the life that your son deserves. And it's not going to be easy.
Jeg skal være her i 4 måneder, uden at jeg må ringe til overhovedet.
Bag den vrede og raseri, der er en kæmpe stor sorg. Er der et sted i kroppen? Du kan mærke det lige her, lige nu, når du fortæller din historie.
Ja.
Lige der.
Hvad med din søn? Savner du ham?
Hele tiden.
Tror du, han savner dig?
Det eneste, vi har, det er det, vi har sammen, det ved du godt. Jeg har fundet en privat mission til os. Gode penge. Er du seriøs? Jeg kan se i dine øjne, du gerne vil.
Each of us have to find our own way to deal with our situation. You'll probably never become the man you used to be, Yusuf. Not even close to the man you dreamt of being in this life.
Amanda Aaltonen.
Rangaistusvanki Amanda Fredrika Aaltonen Turusta. Diagnoosi insania epileptica menstrualis. Elikkä suomeksi kuukautishullu.
Sano joku nainen, joka ei ole.
Mistä tulit?
Pariisista.
Että sinä sinne jouduit.
Länsin kuumailmapallolla. Mulle on luvattu, että kesän jälkeen mä lähden.
Ei täältä lähde kukaan.
Täällä ei kannata puhella ääneen siitä pois lähtemisestä.
Oliko se sun lapsi tyttö vai poika?
En kattonut.
Ei saa laulaa ruokottomia, täytyy laulaa näitä. Pirusee viskasi pimpsan niskaan kourallisen täitä.
Tiedättekö mitä muuten? Me ollaan ihan koikeita ihmisiä.
Olala. Olala.
Joskus mulla oli sellainen olo, että nyt mä en enää jaksa. Toisina päivinä oli sellainen olo, että ette mahda mulle mitään!
Could we just, maybe now is a good time just to let you meet our two actors who's actually here in the room with us. From my film, Thomas Abrigo. Please stand up, Thomas.
And from Tell Everyone, Marketta Tikkanen.
Welcome. All right. Let's start with Alli. Maybe the very first question I want to ask you is to tell us how did you decide to explore Amanda's story, the world of Sally, and why did you feel it was so urgent to talk about them?
You know, I started. It's based on a book, first of all, and the writer approached me and gave me the book and said, if you like it, I would like to adapt it for you to direct. And when I read it, I immediately got excited about the stories of the women. It's not just Amanda whose story we hear the stories of the community, the different life stories of these women, the different faiths of them. And that to me was really interesting because these are almost, I call these the ancient women's stories. There's the woman who was raped and then gave birth to a baby and had to kill that baby. Yeah, this is actually a story that's happened a lot, but I haven't seen it in film too much. And other stories like this, you know, the woman who got depressed and couldn't take care of her children and was then put to the mental asylum for being an unfit mother and that kind of thing. So terrible stories, terrible fates, considered not important, I guess, for art and archives or science, you know, research. And I thought that it was really amazing that Katja Kallio had written a book about this and gave it to me as a gift to make a movie about. But then the more I was digging into it, the more I also understood how unfortunately, urgently relevant it was still. Because really it's about the place given to women or the framework given to women or the spot that you have, you know, you know what I'm talking about, you know, you have to be, you have to have a voice, but not too much, you know, like, you know, just right, you know, you have to be sexy, but not too much, not slutty, you know, just sexy, and like smile, but not too much, you know, that's annoying. And so like we still have a lot of restriction that women know about, and Amanda kind of refuses them all, you know, she's the rebel who just doesn't care because she has unwavering integrity. You know, even when she's put on this island, she never loses her integrity and sense of self, and that's certainly very urgent still. And I'm going to say one more thing about this, and please don't yawn when I say it, but it's also about women's health. I know, doesn't sound very interesting, but it actually, if you look into it, it's super interesting, and your jaw will drop for other reasons than yawning, because in medicine there is an enormous black hole. We don't have nearly enough knowledge of women's health. It's completely ignored and overlooked because of as unimportant and too difficult. Just a very quick example, ADHD medication isn't really tested on women because apparently it's too difficult because of women's hormonal cycles making the testing difficult. So we know that it works great on men, but we weren't actually sure if it works great on women. And women's ADHD to begin with is actually like underdiagnosed. So this is not a film about women's health, but it's a story that takes place because we don't understand women's health. We're putting them in an asylum rather than understanding them. Amanda's character has what's called PMDD, and it's an extremely aggressive version of PMS. So she's in severe pain and murderous and super aggressive when she has it. And at the time she was considered crazy, and it's still very, very badly researched and very, very badly known. A lot of people haven't heard about it, and there's a handful of doctors who actually understand it. It still can't really be treated so well. So it's, you know, stories like women's fates happen in life. You know, there's many women who's had their lives, you know, become something because we haven't actually paid attention to that part in their lives.
All right. Christian.
There's urgency for you.
Christian, what brought you to explore this veterans retreat, and to explore this space which is torn between healing, trauma, an uncertain future. How did that come about?
Well, I think I need to go back 7 years to try to explain the path to this story, because it grew out of the ashes of a personal crisis. I had a deep depression 7 years ago, and on the other hand, on the other side of that, when I was looking back, I was looking at myself like I was very aggressive to my surroundings and didn't want to talk to anybody, was very isolated, and it really made me think that like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I think that's a great saying, but I needed to explore this in a way. And I thought, because I look at myself like a modern, very sensitive modern guy, but how do like the more stereotypical macho men in society, how do they deal with crisis when they've been hit by it? So I was planning to meet different kind of male-dominated groups, but the first like environment I dug into was the soldiers, because I thought it was like the archetypical males of our society, like heroes and strong and heroic like that. And when I met the first day I went to like this there's a big parade once a year for all the veterans in Copenhagen. I went in there, and I went up and afterwards they went to a bar, and I followed them and had a beer and went up to the most like frightening looking guy of them, but he totally opened up to me and invited me home, and I got home to his apartment the week after. And his story was he was the most important person I met in this process, because his story was so heartbreaking. Like he had risked his life for numerous deployments for Denmark, and now he was just left sitting in his apartment dealing with his PTSD by himself, which the society wouldn't even recognize. He had lost contact with all his children because they were secondarily traumatized. So at that moment, this whole project shifted completely. I thought there was an untold story that needed to be told. But still, I think when you watch the film, I think you can agree with me that there's an undertow of a study of male psychology in the film. But of course, the larger course of the film is veterans and mental sufferings.
All right. The next question is for both of you. Looking at the whole development process, I was wondering, where did you find the right entry point for the audience? So the moment where you felt that the film's world was opening up. Your enlightenment, let's say.
I was researching a lot. Like this guy I talked to you about was only the first entry point, but from there I dealt with it. Like I come from documentary, by the way. This is my first feature. So I dealt with it in the beginning like I would do in a documentary. Probably I wasn't even aware that or certain that this should be a fiction, but so I've written a script on of numerous interviews with veterans, the children, military psychologists, and so on. But at a certain point, I've heard about this rehabilitation center, and I was invited to come there. And the moment we arrived, it was just so vivid to me that this was like the arena of the film, because it was like so beautiful nature, but with a sinister or very dark backdrop of these war experiences and war-torn men who were living there. So that really was like a laboratory that we could study these men in. So it's almost a one-location film besides the home of Yusuf.
All right. What about you, Alli?
It's so interesting how many similarities between our projects there are. You know, they are both taking place in an island, and like you know, having the community be a big part of it, but then very much an individual story. And what I also love about the films is that yours deals with the masculine group and mine with the feminine group, but they have like everything is same. We're all human in both, very, very human in both films, and also your supporting characters, females, they are not archetypes or you know, like they have like lots of depth, and I feel like I also just have like one guy really, and he also, like, I feel like we treated our supporting characters of the other genre with the same respect as the groups that we're dealing with. So I just wanted to point that out. For me, the entry point it has similarly to do with the environment. I do a very long artistic prep with my whole team, so we get together with cinematographer, makeup designer, costume designer, and production designer, and we do like a very long prep starting from very abstract brushstrokes and going toward the concrete, and it takes a while. And usually from that, or always from that process, comes the concrete methods for everything. And sometimes it's very simple. They emerge sort of really organically and instinctually. And with this film, it was more difficult because somehow, like scratching, anywhere we scratched, there opened up so many opportunities and possibilities for what the methods would be. And every time we felt like, okay, this path is right, we'll do this kind of strategy, and then there would be like another turning point for us, and we would again have like too many options of tools, you know, like just filmmaking tools. But then, and one of the biggest questions, I guess, was the environment, because the film takes place in the real island where this institution actually, the building is still standing, and where it was until the 60s, it was functioning. Okay. And it's a paradise island. It looks like a place where you would certainly get healthy. It's this wonderful place. So it's not, you know, like you say, asylum island. You probably think gray skies, storm, you know, cliffs, you know, like birds eating your eyes out. But it's like the opposite of that, which to me makes it more heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, you know, because there are these women whose freedom has been taken away from them. They're basically imprisoned in paradise. So it's kind of like a constant reminder of how life is there. Of course, it's nicer to be in a paradise than a terrible place. But I didn't want it to be a prison film, but then I also don't want to whitewash the asylum aspect, the structural misogyny of the place, you know, and just show them in like wonderful forest, beautiful island in sunlight and whatever. So finding the balance between the sort of imprisonment and freedom was very key. And when I finally realized that I should do like a environment strategy or dramaturgy around this zone structure, that was my entry point. That really like opened up the film. So I devised like these zones. You can think of a subway map, you know, like in the center of it was Amanda's cell where she lived. That's her most private place, and she can be the most free there. And then there would be the next zone, like the interior of the hospital, the kitchen where she worked, corridor, dining room, work room. You have a little bit more freedom, but it's very structured, and there's like bars in the hallway and the hallways and that kind of thing. Outer courtyard, next zone. Then you go toward the forests. You know, they have this like beautiful forest where they have some freedom. The free walkers. Patients who were trusted and, you know, not too crazy got to walk into the forest freely, and she was one of them with her friends. There's like these beautiful moments of their freedom like shared together. And then the outer zone, which is the cliffs of the island, the horizon, and the rest of the world, which is always unattainable. She just tried to make it across a couple times, but she never makes it. Spoiler. But so that opened it up to me, because then, you know, like where to put the camera is always the biggest question. That's obviously telling everything. So with actors understanding the intimacy that they were dealing with, and then the camera sort of understanding the zone and the intimacy and the vulnerability it had on different zones, they were merged now into a strategy together. And then we knew where to put the camera. So that was the environment of the actual place took us there.
Interesting. Before digging deeper into your development processes, we can show 2 clips. Wanna share a few words about what we're about to see?
This is, I had a I need to just explain a little bit about. I had a very long and very organic and very complex kind of development process, because it's not been told yet, but the film consists mainly of real life characters, real people who are playing more or less themselves. So the people are real war veterans. So I was filming scenes at Strynø, at the island, and making like stage scenes. And in order that it has two different aims. One was to be more clever on writing the script. I would go down, film, go back and write, go back and forth like that, in order to kind of grasp the reality of the place down there. But in the same time, it was also a casting process. So I would see who would work on camera, who could take directions and stuff like that. And also, like, I found that veterans often had a specific way of their wording. And me coming from a different kind of environment, it was important for me to adapt that into the script. Even though during shooting, most of it was played out. Like a lot of the veterans actually did never watch or read the script, because then they would maybe not react too natural. So we can go deeper into that. But this is an example of one of the veterans taking a walk with the girl Indy, who lives on the farm with a family. Her father is also a war veteran with PTSD, and he has founded this place in order to heal other soldiers.
So the question I'm about to ask is both about development but also production in a way. What I wanted to ask you is how much interacting with bodies and actors changed the film shape that probably you initially envisioned. What did you discover while working with them?
Our method was very improvised. So I would have written a scene, but the first take I would ask them, how would you do this normally? Let's just see how it goes. How would you do this? And they would perform as natural as possible. Because directing non-actors is my experience that the harder you direct them, it doesn't get any better. You have to. They have to like have a sense of themselves and and do what's natural for them. So it was really down to the nuances that they would like give me a sense of their approach, and then from there we would say that's the base of this scene, and maybe we would take out some stuff and add a little to it. But they had, because they did it so natural the first way, they would own the scene like that. So I think that was how we could like strengthen the feeling of authenticity in this.
Okay, and what about you, Ali? How did it go?
I mean, really working with the physical places and the real people changes everything. You know, that's where the discovery is. It's not so interesting maybe what you even think before that, but it's in the synergy and collaboration where all the cinema magic, so to speak, happens. I rehearse a lot with actors, and to me the relevance of the film is always in the great performances. And I really wanted this film to feel like present tense, even if it's a period piece. So I wanted no sort of Wikipedia, imagery, or, I didn't want the camera to marvel at anything. I wanted it to feel that you're just going into that time and looking at the present tense between people. And so everything is in that discovery, working together with actors. And the first thing I do is tell everybody, like, don't respect the text too much, just like be critical, make it your own. you know, sort of bring up anything you want to change. And then when we rehearse, I also rewrite the script quite a bit. And now we had 2 different shoot periods. We had winter and summer shoot, and I actually revised the script quite a bit in between when I had the material from the first 2 weeks going into the summer shoot. So, you know, we think of a film as a linear process, but I think it's more like a creative vortex, like an elliptical thing. It's not linear at all.
And of course, escaping illustration when depicting something more realistic or something more historical, like in your case, is indispensable.
Yeah, I thought maybe I would also add that because of this is real people and they're real stories, most of the characters are playing themselves and are generously putting themselves into the story. Often we couldn't really it adds so much to the scene. If it's okay, Thomas, I can talk about. There's a scene where Thomas is receiving a rejection from the authorities about being acknowledged for his PTSD. The same day of shooting that scene in the morning, Thomas got a rejection from the authorities. So that scene was he could totally act upon his emotions. Thomas is both a war veteran and an actor. He has plenty of experience already. But of course that scene became so alive and so vivid because of that reality, like spilling out on everyone on the set that day.
What you just said is crucial, and it leads me to the next question: boundaries. How do you realize it's time to maybe push a scene emotionally or to step back? Because that's essential, especially in a time where people like intimacy coordinators become more and more important, or there are, luckily enough, more and more talks about mental health, work-life balance, all of these things. What's your take?
Well, it really was a great issue for the funding of this film, because some funders withdrew because they thought they were nervous. Can this be done ethically right? And can you really take care of fragile people with PTSD on a film set? So it was a struggle from the get-go. But I mean, so I took all precautions that I possibly could. I engaged with every single one of the non-actors on the set, and so of course it was quite demanding to like talk to everybody and hear the personal boundaries, and but also we were shooting on an island or the rehabilitation center that did exactly this. They would take care of veterans. So the couple, Anneline and the former UN major would take care of these people, and we would like debrief in the evening and like really take care and talk everything through in order to do this right. But there was one scene when you see the film where Martin, a real life war veteran, was telling his story about his suicidal tendencies, where we had to. I was in doubt whether he broke down completely when he told the story, and I had to stop the shooting for that day because I wasn't sure that it was right. But a few days later, we talked it through again, and he wanted to tell the story, so we shot it again, and actually the same thing happened. He broke down, but he was totally okay by doing that.
It's very different from me because I work with professional actors only, except a small child in my film. But it's never about pushing. You know, everybody's always giving everything, and so it's about being present and seeing what they're doing. And obviously, before the shoot, we have spent a lot of time building trust. So my actors know that I have my eyes open and that I'm using my instrument to see if they are going to the place that the scene, it feels right. If it feels right in me, it's probably right. It's very instinctual. And of course, many times it's about like whether it felt right for them. If an actor asks me for another take, I always give it. There's been one time when I couldn't, and it was traumatic for everyone because of schedules I couldn't. But it's very important to me that it's a collaboration that feels very good to us both. And they know that I will see and try to help them get further if it's needed. And they know that when I say it was great, I never lie about it. I never give empty thanks or empty credit, you know, that then if it was great, then it's great. And it's just being present and having your eyes open, which is not always so easy because sometimes you have 1,000 things going on in your mind about the next scene and how much you're behind schedule and everything, but presence is everything, just being there.
Christian, you touched on some financing struggles that emerged owing to the delicate themes you're tackling. And this leads me to ask you a broader question about your country's film industries. Generally speaking, as artists, as filmmakers work in Denmark and Finland, what do you feel is working right and what can be improved? The Nordics are experiencing a very positive moment. You can just check the palmarès of the main festivals or the recent Oscar wins of Joachim Trier and many more. So what works, what doesn't?
Well, you should ask the Norwegians because clearly things are working there. I personally, as a filmmaker, of course, think, you know, everybody will say put money in films, and that's what's giving our imagination no limit to fly. But I say that you need to put like trust in, you know, trust and sort of how should I say, like facilitation in the filmmaking, in the art of it. You have to give it value. You have to trust the filmmakers. You know, that's what that's what gives like creativity wings, you know. Like I feel like in Finland what's not working is that we are not great as risk takers. I've been talking about this for 20 years. That if you look at, if anybody here was asked to name their favorite films, they would most likely be the projects that were not expected to somehow be easy successes or safe successes or something, but maybe they became it because they were groundbreaking or boundary breaking or just imaginative and just somehow really important to the people who made them. And luckily they got made. But a lot of the things that seem risky to us, whether it's the filmmaker or the story or, you know, the genre or whatever, a lot of times they are just stuck in development hell or don't get made. And then we make lukewarm films that are not traveling anywhere because they're just overdeveloped and kind of killed in the process. So I just want more, you know, risk-taking and like courage and also more money, but that first.
Yeah, actually, I think you're very right that the process of seeking funding at the Danish Film Institute, it has a lot of processes. You get funding, maybe 5 times funding, but so deadlines and thresholds where you have to seduce the editor and come up with new stuff, and you're all the time, it can be over several years. And you, in that process, I think many directors feel so uncertain, so you get nervous. Is this commercial enough? Oh, I have to tweak it like that in order to get the next funding. And I think it would be so relieving if your project is great when you come there. You get the money, and let's see how you, if people believe in you and your story. It would be so interesting to see how projects could fly even higher than they do. But in the same time, I will also say that I think Danish cinema and maybe cinema in opposition to the series is really finding its narrative strength these years, I think, because most series are very polished, and now it comes like the cinematic films are coming now with urgent stories that need to be told, that may not be very entertaining but harsh truths. So and we could see also with my film that it was that it really could spark a debate in our society, which the series very seldomly can on Netflix. So I think films has to be, in the many crises we have in the world right now, cinema films has to break through the barrier and get really important issues on the headlines.
And good for the Danish Film Institute and for you and the whole team for making a film that was really boundary breaking in the, style of making it. So that was probably risk.
It was. Yeah. So some people are risk takers. I will have to strengthen that. Yeah.
But I feel like the film institutes, because they are, it's public money, it's like soft money, they have to also really look at the fact that there's art being made. Because at least in Finland, there's a great tendency of like just looking at numbers of how many people went to see something. Mm-hmm. But, I read about a study where Gen Z people want to see films where they understand everything all the time. I can't think of anything more horrific than that I would just like understand every single second what something's happening. I want there to be discovery between the film and me, and the tension and the thinking. I want to solve things when I'm watching the film. Yeah. So I feel like we still have film institutes, which is great, because nobody's watching this in America, for example. But we have people who could actually be saying like, make, artistic, like ambitious, high-quality films where people have a chance to think also.
You're opening up a Pandora vase there, especially when it comes to new generations, attention threshold, education that is lacking. I think film education is never enough. And the overdevelopment issue you mentioned, it's common to the whole European system, I believe. At some point, we should let artists to be free to tell their stories and not to receive 10,000 inputs from 7 co-producers, 4 funding bodies. I know I'm spitting in the church, but let's be frank in this sense. Because in the end, indeed, the idea is one. You got that spark and you want to pursue it. But thank you for your contributions. We can open up. We got a few minutes left to the audience. If you got any questions for our 2 directors, we are happy to take them. Yeah, we got a person there. And then, the lady, right? Yeah. Sorry, I can't see you very well.
Thank you very much. I'm Matthias, a film composer, and I was wondering, question to both, how you were working with the dramatology in terms of sound and music in the films.
I knew very early on that I wanted Jahr, a Finnish singer and musician she's a folk singer by training and does kind of like very traditional folk singing, but also ethno-pop. And this is the first film she scored together with a composing partner. And I wanted them to start composing before I shot anything, because I really wanted them to be free and sort of make music that had its own integrity, like their style. It was, of course, inspired by the script, and I gave her lots of reference images, and she knew who my actors were and that kind of thing, and she knew the place and everything and the mood, and they were composing for a good 6 months before we started editing. And then I had a lot of that music to work with. That was the actual music. It was really well recorded also, so we could use that. It wasn't just temp. And then I worked with a sound designer, Anne Tolkkinen. I've worked with her for 20 years, and I wanted the main instrument in the music to be a female voice. Kind of the film has these like sort of voices of Saili, the women of the past who live on the island. I could go into ghost stories too, but like I wanted the film to kind of give the voice to the women of Saili, the real ones. So they are like in the soundtrack also as kind of like a reoccurring sort of narrative element. They are there living with Amanda. They warn her. They console her. You know, like it's very elegantly done. Anne is brilliant in sound work. And so with the score featuring Vilma's beautiful voice, and then also a lot of different very organic instruments. We just wanted human plate instruments. And with the sound design, they kind of form this sort of choir of female voices, both from sound and from music together, that sort of carry the story through. And it was such a joy to work with both. I love sound work in film, so that was nice.
Yeah, I think I work with the same sound engineer all the time, Rasmus Winter, who's very skilled, and his approach is very natural, and especially in this film it made total sense that we wanted nature to really embrace Yusuf, and so I think, but I was kind of, as mentioned, this as a co-production, so we were working with Heimathafen Film in Hamburg, so we had to find composers there, and it's always difficult to meet new collaborators. But in this instance, it really was a very beautiful process, especially with combining Kaiser Mars, the German composers, with Rasmus and I. And we had the most creative, wonderful collaboration, where I think the more music you use, the less it can seduce, but it can also take you a little bit away from the scenes. So there was a lot of clutches from the editing room, but we removed so much music coming into sound. And I also wanted to, because Hercules obviously is old Greek mythology about a war hero who killed his family, but was also praised for his accomplishments. So I thought also that I would like to reconnect with that story to make it grander than, that's a bigger story than what you see on screen maybe. So it's really based a lot with the classical music that I hope kind of in some weird way reconnects to the myth.
Great. We got one more question there.
Hi, I'm Anja Andersen. I'm a Norwegian-German actress, and I wanted to ask about the casting process in Denmark or in Finland, or how did you cast?
Well, yours was interesting.
Very early in the process, I couldn't really see any other actor in Denmark than Dar Salim. He is super skilled, but he is very masculine, but he also possesses this the ability to convey his fragility. So I thought he was from very early on, he was a part of the project. But of course, a lot of the people on the rehabilitation center was casted throughout, like the very early stages from my research. And also Thomas was not a part of the rehabilitation center, so you were also a great part of the whole process of casting, where you were actually playing the role of Yusuf in those scenes. So it was very organic and a very organic process, but also because the film is around a group dynamic on in the play. So always I always had to make sure that these guys would like each other. So that was so real life again played in on this. Yeah.
Yeah, casting for different films always takes a different shape, and here I knew, of course, that everything was anchored in Amanda's actor. And so I started with a casting agent, and together we drafted a list of perhaps, I think, 25 people who we asked for self-tapes. And then from those, there was already in the self-tape stages someone who shone like a bright star. I have my notes still that I wrote in my notes, and I was very impressed with her, but I didn't know her from beforehand. And then we moved on to the round of actual auditions. I wasn't there for the first ones. I think the casting agent did those, and the same name also was very much like, wow, I really want to meet this person, which I did, because then we moved into callbacks. But there were still maybe 5 people at this stage present. And then that was a very nice round. And from that, I think 2 people maybe came, or maybe 3 for another callback. And I remember it was a callback. I had cast already one other character. If you've seen the film, I had cast Big Greta because I knew that I wanted Krista Kosonen to play that character. And Krista came graciously to the auditions and she said, like, remember, you have to like really check if this person can like really like let it out, because like I've met so many young great actors and they're like skilled and they have craft and like they're amazing, but then when they need to like really give it out, like they don't dare. And I had prepped a scene, the one that you saw in the trailer, where she attacks that character. Krista is the person who is being attacked in that scene. And when Marketta Tikkanen did that scene, it's not about the attacking, it's about her hearing that she's never going to get out of the island. And she had no knowledge of what I wanted. I always do the first scene without giving any direction because I want to know what the instinctual choice of the actor is. And she goes for it, and I start crying. Like it went into my like just soul the way she was doing it. And I could see Krista's face also after the take. She was just like, okay. You know, like, you know, she was never asking me about that ever again because she could see like, wow, okay, yeah. That was so obviously she was the shining star already from the first round, and like it was very easy to say that this is our Amanda Aaltonen right here. And then we did auditions for the other roles together, you know, like there is a local fisherman who they end up having a love affair with, and for that I wanted Marketta to be there and do auditions with I think 5 guys who came in for that and weigh in and that kind of thing, and you did some other roles as well. But it's you know, people ask a lot about casting, and I find it interesting to talk about, but even more than that, I find the rehearsal process such a key between director and actor, and it was instantly clear to me that we work in a very similar way. We have the same kind of work ethic and interest for detail and understanding the arc and the dramaturgy and really like where to go with the character. So it was a dream process to build the character with Marketta and do the whole shoot.
Time's up, unfortunately, but thanks, Ali. Thanks, Christian. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the festival.